old. You're back in the fold.
Yeah,
That's
in
nice.
and out, in and out.
These are public handouts if anybody wants one as well.
I'm gonna be sharing an email that I just got.
I picked it up to
Here.
Hello.
Good morning.
to have this for my comment or something.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sure I'm upset, like, you can't use the word door, I spent all those years and.
Oh, you want
I
there?
read that in somewhere or English professor.
You're saying that?
and,
Actually sent it to Frank, and then he forwarded it to me, yes, I did get it into it.
Oh, I read it, I just, it was, use up the chance.
Believe it or not, that's terrible. Nobody's got the nerve to get started.
I call the meeting to order, please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Exactly.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
I will move.
Yeah, is there a second? Any question?
Yeah, I'd like to add in an item for the agenda, the topic for discussion, election to fill vacancy on the board of directors.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Discussion? We'll wait
Yeah,
till-
I'd like to discuss, Director Moroni's suggestion. This topic was, brought up at the last regular meeting. And I believe at which time, it was decided, yes, I amended the agenda at the last regular meeting to include this topic.
It's my age.
Yeah. And at that time, it was decided that it would be pointless to appoint a director since we only have one regular meeting left. So I'm not sure why this is being brought up at the agenda now for a special meeting.
Well, I believe that we said at the end, since Tom wasn't present, we were gonna have a special meeting just to get a consensus as to where we
That was
wanted to move.
the issue. We wanted Director Harris present.
Yeah, so it
We want to
doesn't
memorialize it
change
formally.
anything.
Sure, and I believe that Director Herrick, subsequent to the meeting, conveyed his views on that in via email, saying that it would be pointless to appoint anybody with only 6 weeks left and one regular meeting.
I don't care whether we have it on it, I just wanted, we said we were gonna bring it up at a special meeting, and so I wanted to go ahead and get it out here, but as long as everybody's happy that we're not appointing anybody, that's fine with me, I'll withdraw the motion.
I prefer to memorialize it in meeting minutes, that's recorded, that we can refer back to. I think it's prudent, I think it's good parliamentary procedure.
I think the meetings from the June 27th meeting will reflect that. However, furthermore, there is also issue with the rest of the agenda.
Let's talk about this one first, let's not go off on a tangent. So all those in favor of adding this item to today's agenda, I'll call the question. All those in favor of adding this to the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
And the item will be added to the agenda.
I would like to comment on the rest of the agenda.
Are you proposing changes to the agenda?
Yeah, I am. I'm proposing the removal of other topics, with the exception of the topic of the legal issue brought upon by a member of the association. And the reason for my request is basically the board has not followed the procedures related to the special meeting that I called for. It was seconded by Director Herrick. Specifically related to our bylaws. Section 603, calling for the removal of the officer, it states that the removal of the officer for cause at any time by majority vote of the entire board of directors at a special meeting of the board of directors called for the purpose of considering the removal. Furthermore, Robert's Rules of Order state the purpose of special meetings. According to Robert's Rules, they are called only for 2 reasons. 1, something important comes up that must be dealt with immediately before the next regular meeting. 2, some particular business matter is important enough that it needs to be exclusively reason for the entire meeting. I have called for that special meeting to be scheduled a week ago. We are now at a special meeting with the multiple topics, so my view as an individual director is, I believe the legal issue is far more important than, the other topic, which is removal of the officer. So I'm willing to defer that topic to a later time and allow the board to dedicate this special meeting exclusively for the reasons related to legal actions launched by a member, which has a huge impact on our election procedure. And I think that is what really is the most important for a board to be considering at this point in time.
I'm not sure what you're asking, Sylvan. Can you put it into more precise terms? I'm not really sure what you're
Can
requesting.
you
withdraw
Well,
your
I'm
motion
asking
for a
that the
special
board
meeting?
decides between the two topics. It's either gonna be the removal of the officer, which has to be exclusive reason for this meeting, as called for by me, or it's gonna be a legal matter that's gonna be discussed, not the two, because our bylaws specifically state that the topic of removal has to be done at the special meeting and solely for that purpose.
Does it say solely or called for that purpose?
It says exclusive reason for the entire meeting according to the Roberts rules.
So that's, you can have multiple purposes of a special meeting. And so if you call, as long as the notice of the meeting specifies what the purposes is going to be, so you can have multiple purposes of a special meeting.
I realize that, Jeremy, but also, let's go back to the Roberts rules,
Yeah.
okay? What we are talking about, removal of the officer according to Roberts rules is really a trial, a hearing, okay? And everything that I read says that it has to be a meeting, special meeting exclusively dedicated to that purpose only, nothing else on the agenda. So we're either gonna have that today, or we're gonna go with your topic, which is legal matter related to members' action. And a lawsuit against the association and the board. And to me, that is far more important that the board focuses on this morning. So I'm willing to withdraw my action for removal, and let's focus on the legal matters, which I think this is what is important, it's election, and that's what, the only thing that should be discussed in a closed session.
Okay, so you're withdrawing the motion for a special meeting at this time for the removal of Don.
Yes, right, if Tom is okay with that, I would delay it till later time.
Well, I mean, I was hoping that we would have a discussion and put this behind us and move forward, but
I agree.
We can't have two topics, I'm following the Roberts
Well,
rules.
I mean,
Robert's rules doesn't overtake our bylaws, and our bylaws do not say that that's exclusively the reason for the
And then-
meeting. You're the one that called for this meeting.
Excuse me, under Robert's Rules of Order and under the
Oh,
Maryland
excuse me.
homeowners
Oh,
rules,
I'm
I
sorry.
cannot stand
I'm
and ask
sorry.
for something to be tabled. It says whether I am
Excuse
recognized
me,
or not.
you haven't been recognized by the chair, with all due
A
respect.
member rises
But
even
you-
if
I
not
know,
named
but you-
waiting to be recognized under Robert's Rules.
ma'am, this is not a meeting of the assembly of the members, this is just a meeting of the board of directors.
Yes,
You
sir.
actually don't have the ability to make a motion to table something.
I
You're
can make a motion to, from the rules according to Robert's Rules of
Not
Order.
only for a session of the membership, this is a board meeting, so this is, you don't actually have the ability to make a motion at a board.
Well, my motion would contain the right to table this because I don't think it's been handled properly. And I think that as members, we are constantly being held out by this factor and I object to it strenuously.
Okay.
are you asking to, you wanna remove your motion?
Well, I'd like a formal opinion from a legal counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that basically we can have both topics
Yes.
discussed today and that we are in compliance with our bylaws and with the Roberts rules?
I believe so, yes. And so I don't see anything that, I believe so, so I don't think there's anything that precludes you from having multiple purposes of a special meeting.
Well, I disagree, Jeremy, and that is because of the language from the Roberts rules, which basically states clearly that the matter is important enough that it needs to be exclusive reason for the entire meeting. That is, the
Well,
exclusive
so-
reason is going to be either removal of the officer or it's gonna be a legal action by a
Well,
member.
let me ask it this way, we were going to discuss personnel matters, even if, let me see what the purpose of the.
That's the thing, there's really three different things up there.
Exactly.
There's the removal of the president, there is the discussion of, director's actions leading to the recent, involved around the recent, resignation of Director Supik, and then there was to discuss legal matters
Right.
with counsel. So if you wanna pull the one on, removal of the president, is there any reason why we wouldn't go ahead and discuss the other matter
No, it shouldn't be
Part of-
discussed because it was discussed in a previous closed session. You guys had a closed session at the last meeting and you discussed that very topic. That was the reason Chair Parks called for a closed session. And you went into that closed session. So now we are having a special meeting and we are doing the same thing again. You're reintroducing the same topic. As some of the members have observed, the agenda for today's meeting is just very inappropriate. That is not what a special meeting should be about, as far as the board goes and according to Robert's rules.
Robert's rules also differs somewhat to past practice. And in terms of, the special meetings we've had in the past and the closed session meetings we've had in the past, we have had multiple purposes.
That is not to say it was done correctly. So anyway, so I think the board needs to decide. I would like to recommend that the board only picks one topic for the special meeting this morning, and that's the most important. It should be a legal action by a member related to how it may impact the election. I think all the other two topics, like I said, the discussion on director actions was discussed in a previous closed session. What's there to be said anymore? And the second, which is removal of the officer, I'm perfectly okay to defer that to another time, another meeting.
Tom, you would
Well,
say,
I mean, it's his,
are you
he
okay
wants to
with
bring,
that?
yeah, if he want, it's his discussion. If he
He's
does not
rescinding that
wanna have
motion.
it-
If he wishes to remake the call for additional special meeting for that purpose, I suppose you can. Obviously,
Sure.
we're at the end of the cycle, and so officer elections will happen in
I
August.
realize
and
that,
so-
Jeremy. I do realize that. I just think what's important for the membership today is the legal issue and it's the election process, and I think that's what the board should focus on today.
Do you have a problem before we go to closed section, at least closing this out one more time since we agreed to?
If the majority wants to do it, I just thought, minutes from the last meeting will reflect that, but if you wanna do it, fine.
You need to state specifically, let me tell you what I heard. I heard that you wanted to take off of the agenda the motion to remove an officer, correct?
Right,
That's
I
what-
want it,
okay.
because
So
I
we-
believe, I interpret the
I
rules
heard
as
what
that
you
should be
said,
the
okay, I
dedicated
heard
meeting.
what you said, you don't have to explain it again, I just wanna make sure it's very factual so everybody understands what we're doing here. The second part, when I heard something else that said, you also wanted to only pick 2 of the 3 topics, now we're starting to get a little convoluted
Just one, just one.
with the, or
He
one.
said
of the
just
3.
one.
So
Just one,
I
that's what I
think for
said.
sake of clarity, let's take the first motion, and that is, you wanna remove the removal of an officer from the agenda. We take that in and of itself, would that be fair? So we all understand that's gonna be taken off of the agenda.
Okay.
That'd be an appropriate approach. All right, so all those in favor of
Oh, here we
removing
go.
from the agenda, the removal of an officer, and for that purpose, say aye.
Aye.
Okay? All right, so we're removing that from the agenda.
I'm opposed.
Okay, opposed? Carol, opposed?
No, I had my hand up.
Okay. Now, right now, the agenda has been amended. There are 2 items on the agenda right now, all right? The 2 items that were brought up that go into closed session. That's the way I see the meeting moving forward right now.
No,
Here we
because I
go.
requested that the second topic be removed because it was already discussed in a closed
Okay,
session.
so now you're making a second motion.
What he's trying to do is just walk through the agenda.
Yes, I want to walk
One
through very
each thing
clearly,
off.
so, and I want to do 7 things at once, we'll do it one at a time. I respect your opinion now to come and say you want to remove the item about director's actions in regard to
Conduct.
Supik. Okay?
Right.
Is there a second to that? Seeing none, will remain on
You've been used.
the agenda.
You've been used.
So, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
I just want to make a note, for a matter of fact, that the board reintroducing this topic, which was previously discussed in a closed session, is inappropriate for this special meeting. This is not what the special meeting was called for. And I believe the board is out of line with the Robert's rules, and it should be focused only on a legal issue. that
Point
is
taken,
important.
there's a motion on the floor, is there a second to accept
Second.
the agenda as amended? All right,
Can I ask a question?
please.
A discussion. This topic is related to the other topic.
Exactly.
So, if we're going to have the discussion on the one motion that was tabled, why don't we put them together at the same meeting? Because the purpose of the discussion was not only to allow all the board members to understand what happened in the resignation of one of our directors, but what followed from that is what the new motion is. So can we put those together for that special meeting?
I think that logic is sound, however, I would treat it as separate, because we treated it as a separate issue initially. I mean, the first time we wanted to have a discussion was just to understand the circumstances surrounding the resignation. And that's still the intent right now, to the best of my knowledge, and that's what everybody had sort of thought about with, adding your input. You wanted to call that, when you seconded the special meeting and talk about it, you wanted more information, that's one of the things we wanted to do. I think we can separate them out, because there were other extenuating circumstances that caused for the removal. So I would.
But wasn't it based on the call for that closed meeting?
I don't think so, that when it was.
You don't see them two being related at all?
I see them, they can be compared, but as specifically one led to the second one, I'm not sure I make that correlation.
Let me ask a dumb question. Are we just gonna go round and round over the next 30 days on having special meetings to talk about this? Either we talk about it today, or when the new board convenes itself in August, they sit down and have frank discussions about how they're gonna operate going forward. This thing's just gonna drag out and continue to be, he said, she said going forward. So I mean, we're talking about, schedules and everything else like that, and one more regularly scheduled board meeting, and already a special meeting next Friday. There's not a hell of a lot of time left to talk about it. So I say we either talk about these things today, or forget it and let the new board set the thing up. That's my personal opinion, because I just don't see us going anywhere by continuing to call special meetings to discuss topics.
Go ahead.
May I offer a suggestion that we have a separate meeting today, special meeting today?
You gotta have a notice, advance
You have
notice.
to.
No,
So we could maybe add it to Friday? If we have a special meeting on Friday?
What is
The
the topic
13th,
being?
when we're having, when everybody's together.
The topic being?
The topic being the removal of the officer. I just say that for convenience, because I'm gonna be driving across the bridge specifically to attend that meeting. And if we have another special meeting, that's another trip across the bridge. I would rather not participate in a meeting like this by telephone.
I will go along with what Director Maroney said. I think really what the board should do is just, let's put all this aside. We got 6 weeks to go till the election. New board will be in place, and if at that time the board wants to revisit anything related to what transpired, I'm perfectly happy to go along with that. But I think what we should really focus on today is the legal matter, and let's just set other things aside. Listen, it's not the first time the director has resigned. It happened in the past number of times. And I don't know why this is now an issue. Everything that I have stated has always been transparent, related to the performance of the officer. I have a number of things, issues that I have shared, and I'd be happy to share it publicly. I don't know if the ex-officer wants that to happen. That would probably be something worthwhile to ask that person. But I would be very happy to go along with Maroney and set all this aside, and let's just focus on the legal topic, and let's get this
All right,
moving.
I'll ask this question publicly. I'm in favor of that. Can we operate effectively over the next 6 weeks and really put it aside? I want to say it publicly. I know I can.
I can too.
All right,
There's
I'll
nothing
say it publicly. We do have other, I don't want to say more important issues to try to belittle this one. I say we have important issues that have a far more far-reaching effect on the association.
Agreed.
So I want to say publicly that, and I'm willing to say whatever it takes for us to get through the next 6 weeks, can we collectively work as a team as we have done for a good part of our tenure together? Okay?
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Can I make a motion to, this would be the final motion, everything else is gone.
Well, so we have to defeat the motion to accept
I was gonna just,
the agenda as amended, right? So, I'll call for vote. We had the agenda, we're gonna accept the agenda as amended with the legal and the discussion about Director Supic, all right? So all those in favor of accepting that agenda, say aye. Okay, all those opposed? Okay, all right, so now we don't have that on the agenda
I
anymore.
would move that the final agenda would be open conversation on the topic that we moved to add and closed session topic on legal
Is
matters.
there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? So we're basically adding the discussion about filling the vacancy to the open session, all right? All right, I'll call the question, all those in favor of adding that to the open session?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Please note the agenda as amended. Okay, so just to summarize for everybody, what we've got is one item on the open part of the meeting, and that is to discuss the filling of vacancy on the board, and then we will adjourn to closed session for a single item with regard to legal matters. All right, good, thank you for clarification. President's remarks, we've had enough remarks already, so we'll move to public comments. Floor is open for public comments.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment about
Actually,
Joe Reynolds, 84 Watertown Road.
Did he say to stand right there so you can be on the video?
I'm fine. This addition to discuss or possibly appoint this decision to possibly appoint another director with 5 weeks left or whatever, the board certainly can do it, but to do it at this point with no announcement whatsoever to the membership, I believe is a serious mistake of protocol, if nothing else. I think appointing a board member is one of the most important things that this board can ever do, to appoint a member to the board of directors. And to do so without advance notice to the association members, I think would be a mistake. So I would suggest to remove it from the agenda, to tell you the truth. Thank you.
Other public comments?
First of all, I wish to thank the board and Mr. Parks for handling my attempted motion from the floor in a professional manner. Thank you very much. I am here I am Paula Gray from 88 Windjammer. I'm also a candidate for the board. My concern is that these series of things we're reading in the paper right now, and that was going to be my motion, to please temper what's happening with all of these meetings. It is highly impacting our ability as candidates to interact with people, since they don't want to talk about the issues that are facing the future board, but they're busy talking about, excuse me, gentlemen, the contest of ill repute that's wandering around the pages of our paper here in the Pines. And I would like to say, please, thank you very much for saying this will be refrained. Thank you for agreeing to professional handling. As candidates, I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm sure the others, and maybe the members in the Pines do, thank you. Because when we try to discuss issues, no matter how many pages of issues we get from the various papers of good issues, it always falls back to the nit of this. Thank you again, and thank you for holding this off until after our election.
Point taken, thank you. Other public comments?
Inform me if, I think my public comment
your
is
name,
now, I'm John Reeves, 18 Fishing Creek Lane. My public comment had to do with the issue of removal of the president, and I guess I'd be out of line to talk about that at this point since it's off the agenda, even though I'd love to.
Thank you. Other public comments?
Are you saying I would be out of line to talk about that?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay.
No. Special meeting, only what's on the agenda.
anymore.
Yeah, if it's not
sorry.
on the agenda, it's a special meeting. If it was a regular board meeting, you would be able to, but since it's a special meeting called for a specific purpose, the topic has to remain that.
So I'll make my comments when the special meeting comes up to talk about the removal of the president.
Correct.
Or a regular meeting.
Or a regular meeting. Other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move into, I'll close public comments, we'll move into the first item on the amended agenda. Ted?
The topic is election to fill a vacancy on the board of directors. The statements, the board agreed to call a special meeting with all board members' input to discuss whether or not to fill the current vacancy on the board of directors. Pursuant to section 5.04, vacancy on the board of directors, in particular paragraph B, which states, in the event of a vacancy occurs on the board of directors within 90 days prior to the annual meeting, but before ballots have been submitted to the secretary for printing under 5.03, a majority of the remaining directors may appoint a replacement to serve until the next annual meeting. If the vacancy is not for an expiring term, the vacancy shall be included on the ballot. As previously discussed in the meeting,
Need a second for discussion purposes?
Second.
All right, thank you.
As Slobodan pointed out, we basically agreed that it was not a good idea to fill it, but we also said at that meeting we would bring it up so that Tom could weigh in. Tom, ahead of time, weighed in, so I just wanted to make sure that there was a consensus for the record that the board has agreed not to fill that vacancy over the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, I would agree. We've all had that same discussion. My intent in bringing this up was just so we memorialized it, so nobody had any questions about how it was done, who was thinking about what. Tom, it was important to have your input as well. We didn't want to do it with just 5 of the directors, so, I'll state publicly, I agree with everybody's approach in the sense that it really is pointless. To Mr. Brummel's point, you don't have an announcement for that. To Slobodan's point, there's only so much time between now and the new board. You'd really put that individual in somewhat of a precarious position, and I don't think it's even practical to look at it from that point. Cheryl?
Well, I have a little bit of a difference of opinion, which I'll just state for the record, and that is it would be dependent on who the person was that you selected. It could be somebody who has previously served on the board, and therefore there wouldn't be any startup time for that person. And I think there is some value because, God forbid, the election is stalled or delayed. That could mean that there's a longer period of time that person would be serving. So I just put that out there. I'm not saying that we have to do it, but I think there is another side to the discussion that merits being
Some along the lines of contingency planning.
Yes.
Well, I would think that, and I'm soliciting other people's opinion, I would think that should that condition occur, we could, revisit it. There's nothing that prevents us from, should we find ourselves in that position, bring this topic back up and, address it at that point.
Yeah, and I agree, we shouldn't be making decisions on what ifs, even though if the contingency arises, I certainly agree we should revisit.
Other discussion, Tom?
Even though they served on the board in the past, I don't know if they would be current with the issues that we're facing right now. Been a lot of discussion on many major issues, and I wouldn't have full confidence that they would be able to vote. So I would still lean towards being against that, only because I don't see that they would be up to speed since they haven't been involved in the last couple of months.
Any final comments? All right, just publicly stating that as the current sitting board of directors, we're not going to pursue appointing another director prior to the upcoming election. All right, I'm going to state that publicly. Thank you. All right. Seeing the next item on the agenda is adjournment to closed session. It's been amended, so the only item that is applicable here, adjournment to closed session, is permitted by the Maryland Homeowners Association Act only for the purpose of discussion of personnel matters and for the purpose of consultation with the OPA Council as a legal action initiated by a member. So we're only going to do 11B 111, Section 4, subsection 3, consultation with legal counsel on legal matters. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. In favor of adjourning to closed session? All right. Thank you, everyone.
Doug, would you be